Um, so let me just explain the five different points that I'm going to work through today. The basic idea of today's session. One is to examine, the first point is to examine whether or not alien or alien-like abductions actually occur. The second point is to examine whether or not they are staged by humans or if they are genuinely alien abductions. The third question I'd like to examine today is, are all aliens good? The fourth question is, if aliens are abducting people, or if anybody's abducting people, why is that happening? And the fifth point or question that I'd like to examine is something that's vitally important to all of us, and that is whether or not it's safe for us to be going out there doing CE5 events. Question number one, do any kind of alien or alien-like abductions occur? Well, about 28 years ago, I read a book. It is on Amazon Prime at the moment. Now, I'm not promoting this book or even recommending it. What I can tell you is that this book that I read nearly 30 years ago goes into great depth about many accounts that people have accounted when they have gone through a regressional hypnosis about alien abduction experiences. It's basically a lot of transcripts, sentence by sentence, of key points that are revealed during alien abduction experiences. This is just one of many alien abduction books that detail and are evidence for a huge number of people all around the world. We're talking millions at least of people who have these experiences, and it's very hard and scary for a lot of them to come forwards. So there are undoubtedly more people out there who have been abducted or had what they feel are abduction experiences than are generally understood or known. But there are nonetheless a huge number of people that have had these experiences. In my lifetime, I've encountered many people who've had alien abduction experiences. I personally have examined marks on, for example, people's bodies where they feel like they've had probes inserted to extract eggs from them, things like that. I've talked to numerous people who have had what they consider to be alien abduction experiences. So these experiences are real, they're not made up. I have known these people. I know some of these people. I've talked to many of these people, and there are experiences that go on, and those experiences are numerous. There is a documentary, I mean, there are many documentaries about this subject. One of them is called Extraordinary, The Seeding. It's on Amazon, and I do recommend watching it. You know, there's one or two little bits of philosophy about circles, which to me seem kind of stupid. But the meat of the documentary is you are listening to abductees talking about their experiences. And they're real people. You can tell they're real people. You can tell the emotions they're feeling are real and they're strong. And they talk about their experiences. And it's very revealing. If you watch on my YouTube channel, the documentary about greys and tall pinks, that is about people's experiences with greys and being abducted. And there's about an hour and a half of listening to one of my friends from Vegas, Trae, talking about his abduction experiences.
It seemed like there was two kinds. The Greys seemed like the minions or servants to, and they were, I want to say, 36 inches to maybe 40 inches, about 3.5 feet, give or take. And the masters of them all were more of a pinkish with the almond eyes, and they were about must have been about 7 feet. And I remember going to sleep because every night I went to go to sleep, I would be afraid. And you have that sense that someone's in your room. You pull the covers, and all of a sudden you wake up in the middle of the night and nothing's there.
Mm.
And when I started remembering, I remember seeing people run around underneath my window seal. You just see the tops of their heads. You hear clicking in the background or whispers. And I remember one time specifically, I was really afraid and I'm clutching the sheets really hard. And I feel a hand come out on my shoulder and high part like that. And I hear in my mind, what can we do to make you not afraid? And
Okay.
then after that, they said the memories started coming in more and more. And I started understanding them a lot better than just, oh, what does this mean? What does that mean? I didn't see owls or animals anymore. It was clearly there was a person there. There was somebody standing in the corner waiting for me to go to sleep.
So those were the 7 feet tall ones.
Right.
So they're like
They,
a tall, skinny adult in height.
right. And bald. They have the almond shaped eyes, but they're not sunk back.
Okay.
They do have where our whites are, it is darkened, but you can actually, if you look close enough, see a huge enough iris about the size of a half dollar or maybe an Ike, a full dollar. They're pretty good size. You can actually see the iris, the pupil retracting and opening up, just like ours do. Um, Again, they have the slits for the noses. It's just not predominant. I mean, maybe it's just like a bump. It just bumps down. They have lips. They're I don't want to say they're like teeth, but um, you ever seen Oscar fish where they have kind of like a bone right here on
Mm.
both top and bottom? So they have some kind of, I don't know if it's the lower mandible or part of, or if it's actual. I mean, I never put my finger in the mouth. Yeah, I can see it, but I mean, I can see age lines around the corner of the mouth and around the eyes. You can actually discern the age of some of them around the way their skin wrinkles and tags. But like I said, their skin is not like ours, where you can see pores and stuff on it. It's more like a seal skin, like a smooth leather of like a shark or something like that, real smooth like that. And they're the ones that had the more animatronic feel about them. I mean, they didn't really talk. They didn't. You couldn't ask them questions. They would just work. They just whatever they're doing, that's what they do. And it was the taller ones that would control them and tell them what to do.
So you feel that the greys are not themselves sentient or conscious. They're just more sort of like machines, biological machines that work on behalf of the, yeah.
Or some type of slave being.
Okay.
Like even not. It's not just me. My whole house would start feeling really tired around, like I said, 9:30, when our house is usually up and moving for a while. And so we're all one after the other. We're just like, wow, I'm really tired. All of a sudden, I'm going to go to bed. And so they'd bring us all out into the main room, the living room, and we'd all be standing there, and we'd go up through the ceiling. It's like going to Disneyland every time for the first time, because there's this just huge vessel above you with all the different lights, and it's just amazing. And then in the middle, it kind of looks like plasma, like liquid plasma.
Mm.
It was as big as it would stretch over our pool and over the apartment building and almost over to the next apartment building. So it was a good 200-300 feet in diameter. It was huge.
And it's literally right above your house, your home.
A couple 100 feet above it, above the roof.
Okay. So that's Trae. Is Geraldine here with us? Geraldine is one of the people who is in the documentary Extraordinary, the Seeding.
Yeah, so my name is Geraldine Orozco, And do you want me to go into my bio?
Give me a little bio. That would be awesome. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm owner of Bay Area Meditation here in San Francisco, California. And I'm also owner of hybridmother.com, which is an international support group for experiencers. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, Qigong master, and meditation instructor. So, yeah, so my primary focus of my research is the hybridization program and contact, interdimensional contact, and where that meets consciousness and all of these exciting topics.
How did you get into this? What were your first experiences, and how did those experiences progress?
Yeah, good question. So in 2013, I had been diving really deep into the deprogramming of my subconscious mind. So everything, all of these false ideas of who I am, who I'm supposed to be, I was really deeply questioning all of that. And it came to a point where I was meditating for hours and hours a day. And I would keep this up for several months. And in October is when I had this incredible life-changing experience where I was literally taken out of my bedroom consciously. A white light entered my room. My blinds were closed. I went up to the window. I looked through the blinds. The light got brighter. All of a sudden, I went paralyzed, looking around with my eyes, trying to figure out what was happening to me. And next thing I know, I'm literally being pulled through the wall, through the window, in front of these bright light on top of my garage roof, which is outside my window. And I'm seeing the streets, the houses, the trees, everything. And these big 6 tall grays come out of the white light and remove the emotions out of my body completely and take me on board the craft. And as they bring me onto the craft, they begin to holographically change my surroundings. So I'm not really seeing what the craft is looking like from the inside. But then I'm been taken out of that room and I'm shown holographically from a prism. All this information begins to come out. It was a blue prism, and it had like 8 different layers, and each one of the layers would expand around us, or we would travel within them somehow. And it would show us information. The first thing that they showed me was a bunch of alien language that was very much like mathematic combined with, if you can imagine, Russian slash, the Cyrillic type of, letters with Japanese and mathematical equations, something like this, just insane language that primarily it looks like it's speaking in infinities. And the more I paid attention to each word, the little I would understand. It's when I kind of let go and I would see them cross me that it would create these images in my mind. And anyway, that's how I kind of understood what this telepathic communication felt like and what it was like. But the most impactful thing of that whole experience, although they showed me many different things, they took me to the planet Maya from the Pleiades. And they also showed me 8 hybrid children. From these 8 lights, 4 of them were presented to me. And when I meet them, I recognize myself in them. Like I know that they're mine. They know who I am. And all of a sudden, all these memories started to flood in from the past experiences that I had with them. And they also showed me what it was like to feel this incredible peace, this feeling of this immense peace, connection to everything, and disconnect from everything at the same time. And it was just really powerful. But I basically found myself opening my eyes hanging on the side of my bed. My little pants at the bottom the cuffs were dirty. My feet were dirty. Like it was just a complete, like very visible physical experience that my body was hurting, and the burning sensations from the light was still in my eyes. Like I was still watery. My skin would burn to touch. And on that Monday, when I got back to work, for the first time, I saw my client walk through the door and I could see absolutely everything. I could see her entire multidimensional body, meaning colors, lights. I could feel her on a very deep level, her thoughts, everything. And so that was the first time for me that I had that level of intuition. And it was difficult for me to leave my house like 3 months after that. Like I couldn't leave my house, I couldn't go anywhere.
Can I ask you, the beings that you saw in that first experience, Are you able to describe physically what they look like in as much detail as you're able to?
Oh, yeah, we can go into a lot of detail. I mean, they were very tall, almost 7 feet tall, and they were grays, but they were very thin exoskeleton type structures to their body. And they were textured in a way where I like to reference, it looks like the rhinoceros skin almost, because it has a bit of a texture, but it's fine. So when you look at them from far away, you're not really seeing so much of the texture, but when you get close to them, you begin to see the wrinkles around their skin, around where the skin bends. And very thin bodies, but the head is larger. It's larger and longer, and their eyes are gigantic and they are black. So, you know, when I first saw them, I mean, you just see these 12 eyes that are just huge. And even though there's no sclera, you don't see a sclera, you see the pupil, and it looks like you feel where they're looking. It's more of a feeling. You're not seeing a pupil moving. It's just, you just tell where they're looking at, where they're paying attention to. And it's almost as if within that eye, there's movement within there. So it's not that it's like almost like as if it's an outside shield of some sort. When you start looking at the skin around the neck, I almost want to say that the texture creates a hexagonal patterns with the wrinkles and textures of the skin all around the whole body. And the variations are from darker gray into a lighter gray, but towards the belly is a little bit, it's softer, and it's almost as if it's a little rounder. It's rounder. So you'll feel the skin a little bit drop or sag even slightly over the belly area. And it has the four fingers. They're long, thin.
Did they seem to be wearing any clothing?
No.
Okay.
No.
Could you tell if they had a gender?
You cannot tell that they have a gender. In fact, no. But they feel, you can feel the energy either stronger or lighter. That's kind of how I could describe it. And I wouldn't even categorize it in a feminine or masculine type of energy. I think it's different. I think it's quite different. But the way that they communicate is telepathically, for sure, you know, all of them.
Okay. And they showed you the Palladian system?
Yes.
So did you get the impression that they were Palladians?
Yes. I believe that they were very much connected to that, or working within a specific agenda in which was directed by the Pleiadians. Huh?
Okay.
Yeah. So didn't have anything to do with reptilians or draconians, this specific experience. I've been a part of 4 different programs. So, you know, I have experienced other races. But this was the most conscious, you know, physical experience, most vivid. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the hybrid children that they showed you during that experience, when you were introduced to them, you felt like, oh, those are my children.
Instantly. Yeah.
So instantly you worked out that this was not your first contact.
Right. So just want to add, I mean, when I saw the child and made eye contact with the very first child, that's when memories started to come up. And it was memories of past that I couldn't remember. And the shocking thing about that is that as the memories were coming up, I was trying to place them, and I was thinking, how can you forget this? This is so important. Like, you know, giving birth and taking care of this child, how is it possible? So that right there was something that was shocking. But the other thing is that the memories then started to kind of bleed into my lifetime experience memories, which meant that it would be days when I was ill, for example, or when I saw a bright light. And when I prepared myself from the hypnotherapy, that's when I started to make a list of all of these anomalous experiences that I started to think, okay, that was the memory that came up during that experience. And that's how I knew where to look in my life. I mean, at the age of 5, I had a bright light come into my room, and then I had missing time. So that's something that was visible, but I didn't understand the connection, right?
So this is where I ask, and I see that Raphael has sent me a message, and thank you for volunteering to talk, Raphael. Would you like to give us 2 or 3 minute account of your experiences? Thank you, Raphael.
I'll be more than happy. As a matter of fact, I was itching to say something as you was relaying to the stories, because so much of this is reflective to what I've gone through. First of all, thank you for putting a group like this together. And thank you for everybody that comes to these things, because for real, I've felt for a very long time that I was very alone and afraid to come out with these things out of just fear of, people. I have 2 kids, I don't want them to say anything about my children. I don't want my children to be, my wife get pulled into any of it. So, but now I'm definitely being more active in the community, and I would love to share. So since the age of 5, I've been abducted by grays, what you consider, gray aliens. I do agree with the way that they seem robotic, just due to the fact of the lack of emotion on their face, the lack of compassion when the fear hits. One situation I remember, which is one of my earliest abduction experiences, was I just, for a very long time, because at an early age, I've always been scared to sleep alone for some reason, now knowing what that reason was, but I slept in a twin bed inside of my parents' room for a very long time. And I remember myself, I must have been like 6 or 7 years old. And just one night, I just remember having this feeling in the middle of the night that somebody was staring at me. And I just couldn't understand it because my eyes were closed, but it was like an intense feeling, like if you're like at a restaurant and somebody's staring at the back of your head, you have to turn around. So for some reason, I just told myself, if I could wiggle my toes, then that means that I can move. And before I opened my eyes, I always just made it a clear thought. Try to wiggle your toes, because if there's anything in the room, you can run away. Never knew why, but there's always been like a primal instinct that I've always had since a child. Well, anyway, in this specific moment, I couldn't wiggle my toes. So I knew when I opened my eyes, I was going to see something I didn't want to see. At the foot of my bed, what I saw was a traditional gray alien, big bulbous head, big almond eyes, 2 holes where like the nose would be, kind of like a skinny, kind of like nasal kind of area, slit where the mouth is, really thin, frail neck, definitely had clothes on, but it was skin tight, definitely some kind of rubberish. The reason why I know the way it felt, because I remember as it floated towards me, because it didn't walk. It kind of like hovered slowly in front of me as it was staring at me intensely, which, by the way, I was completely paralyzed. I couldn't move. I was actually trying to scream for my mother, but my mouth wouldn't move. So the voice would just be like, like kind of like screaming. All I can really move was my eyes. And as it's slowly floating towards me, I can see at the doorway, there was another gray. And behind that gray, there was another gray standing behind it. They were all the same size. But it's floating towards me. And it's getting closer to my face, almost to where it gets to my nose, almost like us Eskimo kissing me. And I completely just go, and I pass out. I wake up and it's morning time. I tell my mom about it. She claims that she heard me kind of screaming a little bit, but she thought nothing of it. And it was just a nightmare. It was just a dream. Later on in my life, I always took this as it was a dream. It was a dream. I guess fast forward to like 16, 17, is when it started ramping up a lot more. And that I was laying on the couch one day, and I just remember slowly just passing out. Nobody was home. I was kind of like just watching TV. And I just remember fading out. And right before I faded out, I saw like this black. The only way I can describe it is like it formed like a spider web, almost like Venom, I would say. If you watch the movie Venom, the way Venom is kind of like this black gooey kind of substance, it started spreading across the ceiling. And on the other side of that black, there was a gray staring at me. So I completely was paralyzed there. passed out again, woke up, took it as, okay, this is something deeper than what I thought it was. And then in my early 20s is when I started gaining the memories of actually floating out of my bed, floating directly through my wall, which to me, the experience of going through the wall was more of my body would vibrate. And I can actually weirdly taste like the plaster and the concrete as I pass through it a little bit. And as I go floating through, because there's some trees in the backyard of where I was living, as I was floating through the trees up into the ship, I would also kind of taste and sense the branches kind of going through me, but I wasn't completely out of phase. I was like in phase, out of phase. I wake up, I'm in a ship, I'm walking down a very long white hallway. And I'm talking about, it's long, it's very long, it goes on forever. And there's a tall, what I thought was a tall white, but I heard you describe it as a tall pink. To me it's about 7-8 feet tall. It has very long arms, long fingers. I know it had long fingers because when it grabbed my hands, the digits was able to literally go all the way over my hand and around it. And I'm 6'1". So I knew it was like at least 7.5, 8 feet tall, long neck, smaller head, but still kind of the same gray aspects to it. No shirt, no bodysuit, had kind of pants of some sort, kind of like, it was definitely covering up something from the belly button down, but there was no top pieces. And it was whiter than pale, I would say. And it was on the left side of me and on the right side of me. And in this situation, I remember actually walking. This is where it gets a little bit kind of emotional for me because my son, I have 2 kids, and one of my kids was actually, I was holding my son's hand. One of the grays was holding my hand, the tall whites, and the other tall white was holding my son's hand. And we're walking down this very long white hallway. As I approached the long white hallway, and by the way, I'm not struggling, by the way, which is weird to me. I'm perfectly fine with this being next to me. I'm perfectly fine with the being holding my son's hand. I'm okay with all of it. I'm walking down this long white hallway. Eventually, I get to like this end of it, and I see what I think is a two-way mirror. And the reason why I think is a two-way mirror is because I remember the gray distinctly putting me in front of it and making me look on one side, and then the other gray grabbing my son and kind of going around and entering the room with my son. And what I was looking into was a daycare. I couldn't describe it anything different than a daycare. It was 100% like if you go to like the children's area of a hospital and you wait in the lobby, there's like pictures of paintings on the wall of bears dancing with little kids and in a meadow, and there's little toys in the corner. I remember it like yesterday, and there's one little rocking chair in the middle of it. My son goes to sit down, and he's sitting down Indian style in the corner of the room, and there's these 2, or I want to say 3 other what I consider to be hybrid children sitting with him. And they're playing some sort of game. I can't really tell what they're doing, but I know that I'm being observed by the one gray, which is watching me observing this room that looks like a daycare with these kids. So I'm definitely getting the sense that I'm being watched while watching. Then that gray brings me into the same room and has me sit down inside the on top of the rocking chair. I sit down, and this other hybrid, I would say is hybrid because the being that came in after the tall white left was very humanoid, but the only way that I could describe that it wasn't human was the eyes were a lot bigger than a human's eyes. Everything else was the same, and the hair was a lot less full than normal hair, and it was a female. She proceeds to give me a hybrid child. It must have been an infant for some reason, and a bottle to feed him. And I'm holding this child, and it's intensely looking at me, trying, and I get this sense of like, it wants to know what exactly I'm doing while I'm feeding it, what kind of emotions how close I'm bringing it to my chest. I'm getting the sense that it's studying me while I'm holding this child. As I look at the baby, I can tell that it had some part of me in it. I couldn't describe it, but I know when I hold my kids, I was at both of my kids' birth, and I held my kids, I was instantly connected to my child. And I felt the same way. The only difference was it didn't look like me at all. It had really big eyes. It looked a little sickly. And when I was trying to feed it, it kind of didn't want to eat. It obviously didn't want to eat, but I was getting the sense that it wanted me to feed it. Then I kind of black out. I don't remember leaving that room at all, but I end up in what seems to be some kind of auditorium setting. And I'm sitting down.
Raphael, I'm gonna get you to pause a second. The reason I just want to pause briefly is to let everybody know that what Raphael is describing is exactly what I've heard many, many times before. Raphael's experiences are not unusual. If he was, I mean, he's talking for quite a long time. If I felt that what he was saying did not fit in with what everybody else says, then I would start to think, I'm not sure if this is real. But everything he's describing is exactly what Trae goes through. It's exactly what many other people are going through. Interpreting what those experiences are, that then becomes a little bit harder for people. And that's where I like to try and interject a little bit of my understanding. So Raphael, those ones that you were describing as tall whites, they don't have hair, is that correct?
100% do not have hair, yes.
So those are not tall whites, at least the way that humans describe tall whites. I've made a separate video about tall whites, and they are far more human looking. They do have blonde hair. They look more kind of Nordic. And so that is a different species. I don't know if what you're describing has a name, but it fits in with, it sounds exactly like the tall pinks. What you're describing about the children, the play area or the daycare area with pictures and with toys. When I do CE5s with people outside and we're remote viewing, and some people can remote view really effectively, it's happened before that people have remote viewed into alien craft and they see toys lying around. They see things like teddy bears and so forth lying around. And so this is actually common. Some people, many people, when they're young, instead of seeing alien-like creatures, they put into their minds, they see animals or cartoon characters, or owls is a common one. So there's a lot of consistency with what Raphael is saying. Now, if these experiences that I'm talking about, if they were just one or two people and I've never heard any of these experiences from anybody else at all, I wouldn't be relaying to them because I wouldn't consider them reliable. But the fact is that all of these experiences, millions of them, are recounting the same things. One other piece of evidence that I'm not going to go into a lot here, but when Dr. Greer talks about abductions, he does acknowledge that abductions occur. And his statement is, in fact, this is moving on to point number 2, which is are abductions alien in nature, or are they staged by humans? His statement, word for word, is alien abductions are largely the creation of and action taken by covert human disinformation projects. He feels that he has evidence that proves that alien abductions are all human, like industrial military complex staged. Now, if you were to go to his YouTube channel and look at some of the testimonies that people have given there, I haven't seen a testimony in there that talks about abductions being staged. But if you watch the Richard Doty interview, which is an amazing, fascinating interview, I do recommend everybody watch that. He talks about them actually having a program where they do stage alien phenomena, and they have gone out in UFOs with, he describes, deformed humans in order to scare people. Now, in that document, in that interview, he does actually say at one point that the industrial military complex was at that time not able to reproduce aliens. For example, they were flying reverse engineered UFOs, but they had to have human pilots because they couldn't reverse engineer the aliens, which were required to interface with the UFO controls. So that statement in itself seems to push away from the idea that any aliens, that alien-like creatures that are seen are human-made. Now, there are commonly, people who are abducted see military personnel in the craft. So it's quite common for there to be some kind of connection with military personnel. But the craft and the aliens that are all on board, in my opinion, they are genuinely an alien species. So is there some kind of collaboration going on? There is some sharing of information. There is some collaboration going on. Exactly what that collaboration is, I do not know. There are plenty of theories out there. Theories like the US military has made agreements with the aliens, that the aliens can have open permission to abduct people in exchange for technology. Now, have you ever seen any human officials on any of the craft that you've been on? Like
100%. When I was 16, I remember being in one of the medical bays, and I'm on the table, and it's slightly kicked back about 45 degrees, and there was a tall white pink there, and I don't remember if we had any kind of interaction, but there was two suits behind him, one in a green suit, one in a blue suit, Army, Air Force, and they were talking. I could hear muffled, and it was kind of dark where I couldn't make out their faces, but I could make out their suits and the colors of them. And they had, I don't know, clipboards or maybe like schedule books or something like that. And the guy in the green, the Army guy, shut his and said, "Okay, we'll take him." And I graduated early from high school, which I was a 2.5 student GPA, and I graduated with 3.79 to graduate early. And I went right to the military in the Army. No idea why. Never had any interest in it.
So that experience where they said, "Yeah, we'll take him," that happened before you then went into the military.
Well, about 2 years.
And so do you feel that you were selected?
Programmed.
You were programmed to go into the military.
I believe I was programmed.
Do you feel if you think about that, there was a purpose in you then selecting you to go into the military? Do you know what that purpose was? Do you think that anything in your military career has any relation to this at all?
It's possible. I went in for infantry and I was airborne, so they threw me out of an airplane with a gun, and I learned how to proficiently shoot it well enough, yeah, very well. And I got out, September 9th, 2001. You do the math on that one. Yeah. So I don't know. Really weird.
So humans are working with the tall white pinks. I mean, who's in charge? Do you think it's an agreement, a collaborative operation that's going on with all the experimentation? Do you think that the aliens are doing it for the human officials?
I think everybody has their own agenda at this point, and the way it turns out is who can poke who over time and see where the chips lie. I think that's really where it stands at this point, especially when you're dealing with humans, especially when you're dealing with humans that are in the military.
Yeah, yeah.
When the orders come down, it usually means you can't ask the questions, you have to do it.
Yeah.
And the people giving the orders never put themselves in the way that they have to answer questions. So who knows?
Yeah. Do you get a sense for how many of this species there are in the vicinity of the Earth?
Probably 100 billion.
100 billion tall white pinks in the vicinity of the Earth.
Probably.
So they vastly outnumber even the humans.
More likely.
Wow.
Not necessarily in this area, but surrounding area.
In the
Not
solar
one.
system.
Yeah, within our solar system.
Did you ever get told, or do you have an idea for why they remain hidden from the whole population generally?
The only explanation I was ever given was this is the way they do things, and this is what they're told on how to do it, and that's the way they do it this way.
They are told to do it this way.
So what makes me think is through either the Council of Nine or the treaty that our governments signed with whoever, this is the way it has to be done.
So after you had undergone the regressional hypnosis, then you started to piece together what was going on and what your role was in these. You talk of 4 different programs. Mm-hmm. Would you like to maybe tell us about, let's just start with one of the programs and tell us what your role is in that program?
Sure. So there are 4 different programs through my experience. I'm sure there are thousands, millions, yeah. Right? So just through my personal experience, one was draconian, one was reptilian, one was Pleiadian, and one was Earth. It's an Earth program, which was conscious experience that came after the year 2017. And I became involved in the terrestrial program, which is more of a genetic cloning program, slightly different. And so let's talk about the different programs. The draconian program is, of course, from our human understanding, incredibly dark, okay? And so I'm going to give you an overview, but then we can talk a little bit more in detail about what those mean, because these are very, very complex topics. They're by no means simple, and just you can't categorize them in black and white, basically. Yeah. You know, so this draconian program, they literally feed off a different source of creative life force. So it's more of a destructive life force that they feed off of. And so that results in a lot of these replication programs and hybridization programs utilizing from the human those aspects, magnifying them. And so whatever beings are being created are more of an entity / lower vibrational frequency beings. And so in order for the human to be able to incubate such a thing, a lot of implantation is done. So at the age of 5, I had the first implant put in my uterus and different parts of my body, which monitored throughout my life. But there were overlapping agendas. So it's not just one group at a time. Different groups had access.
Do you recall, do you have a memory now of them at the age of 5, actually
Yes.
inserting that implant into your uterus.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And with you describe them as draconians. Are they reptilian, or what's the difference? Are they the same thing?
They are not the same thing. Very different. And yet, the physical appearance of these beings, I think, don't really say so much, to be honest with you. It doesn't matter if it looks like Jesus or a white light. What really defines what they are is the vibrational frequency that they're emitting and how their exchange is with the person. An imbalanced exchange, parasitic exchange, is always from the lower groups. It doesn't matter what they look like. Now, identifying that can be kind of tricky because there's a lot of technology, a lot of mind control, a lot of screening of images that are being utilized in these agendas. And so oftentimes the draconians won't really bother screening anything other than covering their faces so that you won't see exactly what they look like. But they're pretty straightforward with the kind of work that they do. And I think I've noticed this from many different contactees as well. They know it's draconian through that contact. It's a very specific vibration that's very dark. And however, they do have these honeycomb type crafts that are they're hybrid crafts, and in these hybrid crafts they collect the children that will be utilized for these hybridization programs. And so there's an area for the children which are implanted. There's an area for the maternity ward of some sort where, you know, they are giving birth, and there's an entire department to the biological development of whatever organisms they're working on. And all of this hybrid craft is basically remote directed by the main craft, which really truly is an orb. It's an orb. It's like a gigantic spheric craft. Now, then we go into the military, and what I have understood is that the military aspects of the hybridization program are directed by the draconians. And so however, they do also have technology. It's chemical technology that they inject into the body to create screen images. And oftentimes they will cover their work by making it look like it's an ET abduction. And so go ahead.
So when you're talking about the military, you're talking about humans.
Yes.
Human military.
Yeah.
So the humans are working and coordinating with the draconians. But it's a collaboration. It is not that the humans have somehow constructed the draconians. It is a collaboration between alien draconians and human military.
So the draconians kind of bringing in these humans, right, in order to create these structures of reality, in order to continue this kind of cycle of support, I guess, life support, which we provide in exchange. But they are very dark programs in that they're parasitic when we're unconscious of our free will and what we're engaging with.
So we need to push ahead with question number 3. Are all aliens good? And this is a very important question. And there are two different points that I'm going to look at within this. First of all, there are many different species of aliens. So to talk about them all like they're in one group, aliens, that's very misleading. That would be like saying, are all animals bad? Or are all animals good? There are many different species of animal on this planet, and to lump them all together and say, are they all, is something we just can't do. Now, I've investigated aliens my entire life. I've done many CE5s. A lot of people here have open and active communication with different alien species. And almost all of those experiences are extremely positive. when we do CE5 events, I've never experienced any negative, I've never experienced anything negative at all. It's always very loving and friendly and peaceful. And the aliens that come in of different species are always good, friendly, loving, healing aliens. They're wise. We've never had any negative experiences at all. So the impression that I get is that in answer to that question, are all aliens, if I were to say, are all aliens good, I would have to say the vast majority of alien species that visit us, and they're coming from lots of different places in the universe, the vast majority are good. Yes. Are all of them good? Well, then we have to ask the question, what do we mean by good? What is our definition of good? And that's a philosophical, subjective question, but I'm going to give you my viewpoints on that. One easy addition to the word good or bad that you can make is for who. Are aliens, are these experiences good? Well, are they good for who? Are they bad for who? If we consider an example of human beings raising and killing a pig for food, is that good? Is that bad? Well, it depends for who. It's good for the person who likes bacon. It's bad for the pig. We could argue that something is only truly good, truly absolutely good, when it's good for everyone. So we could ask the question, well, are these abduction experiences good for people? Are they bad for people? Can you describe some more about the type of experiments or the type of procedures you see happening to people?
Like I've seen them detach arms and they scrape from the inside of the marrow, or they pull out whole veins and they pull them out and they'll replace it with some kind of synthetic vein so they can study the actual walls and stuff and what is inside the walls of the inside of the vein. Things like that. They pardon the expression, they'll undo someone's testicle and see how long all the little strings are. I mean, that's stuff they're interested in. All the way down to the mitochondria of the atoms. They want to figure out every part, or not the atoms of the cells, the mitochondria of the cells, and they want to figure out what part, well, who came from where, because not all humans ended up on the planet at the same time. Different blocks of humans evolved at different times, and why. And they're basically trying to figure that out for breeding purposes. Who has the best blood type? Who has the best? It's like matching an organ donor with, a patient. They got to figure out what's the right combination and why this one failed and how come this didn't fully develop. Where's the right combination for whatever reason, for whatever experiment that they're trying to figure out.
Okay.
But not all of it's physical. They have mental experiments too, where you don't even leave your bed. They get you in the middle of the night while you're asleep. It doesn't even have to be in the middle of the night. They'll catch you in your dreams. They'll bring you up there mentally and put you through tests to see where you go from there.
Can you describe any of the mental tests?
I started having dreams, and some of these dreams were strategies, like leading mass amounts of troops into areas, or some of them were like fighting different people, stronger people. Sometimes I would have a knife, sometimes they would have a knife, and then some of the other ones were medical assistants. And it's like kind of like either you're going through a learning annex class, or you're teaching the class, or different experiments like that.
Okay.
And so it's the last couple of years have been a little odd when they bring up. I've seen flight studies.
You've seen flight studies? What do you mean by that?
Oh, like how humans can adapt to their technology. So they put you behind one of their the controls of one of their I don't want to say fighter pilots. It's small craft, and they teach you how to maneuver them and work them and everything, and see who's best apt for it. For what, I don't know.
When you're in those medical areas, you're seeing what sounds to be quite horrific things going on. I mean, is it a horrific place? Are people yelling and screaming in pain if there's no anesthetics, or are they mentally sedated?
I don't know about those people. Yeah, you hear screams. You do hear horrific screams. Yeah, anybody would. But from what I know, anytime that they're happening to me, they tell me it was like I was screaming inside of my head. And so I don't know if it was audible or not. But yeah, you would hear people scream all the time for whatever reason. And it's, even though it's like an open place, it would be like a deafening scream, like a hollow scream. So maybe
Okay.
maybe we'd be picking them up psychically. Don't know.
And is the atmosphere there therefore scary?
No. Like, again, that's a person by person kind of thing. But for me, it's not. Uh, for me, maybe the first few years or so, yeah, could have been. But I'm not saying I've 100% given myself over to them to do with it. But I don't want them to stop. I don't want to have what I know taken away from me.
Mm.
I mean, yeah, maybe they have to do a couple things here and there. My threshold of pain is really high, not as high as some of the stuff that I've heard other abductees talk about that they did, putting wires up their noses and things like that. But maybe they've done it, maybe they haven't. I don't know. But
So
it's worth it.
if they were to give you the option of, okay, we're going to leave you alone now, or we're going to continue, you would want to continue to
I'd
have the
want to
relation.
continue.
Okay.
I've always said if they ever gave me the chance to go with them, I'd go in a heartbeat. I wouldn't even think twice.
Do you think the tall white pinks are cognizant, that they're aware that they are causing pain to a lot of the humans that they are abducting?
I believe they are. I truly believe that they are. I don't know if, like how some people say that they're soulless beings, but I don't think that their personality is capable of having the kind of emotional responses that we have. I think it's all analytical for them.
Because for humans, a large part of our sense of morality is based upon how we affect the emotions of the people around us. Do
Right.
you therefore feel like that the sense of morality of the tall white pinks is different from our sense of morality?
I think the Egyptians had a great way to explain it, because they said that the body's mixed up of two things: the ba and the ka. The ba being the personality, and the ka being the soul. I just think they're lacking the ba part of it. They just, it's like a personality. I mean, yeah, they probably have leisure time, or yeah, they have whatever else they do outside of uh, 11 or 18-hour days or whatever they put in. And whatever that is just either something they do, but I don't think it is. I don't think it's like how we feel.
Mm.
It might be like a necessary, like, okay, on this day I have to wash all my uniforms, and I have to, you know, clean up my chambers or something like that. They do it not only out of a sense of pride, but they do it because they have to,
Mm.
or it's like a rule. But I don't think they have a sense of doing it because it looks good and it makes them feel better, kind of thing. I don't think it's that deep.
So in your mind, these beings, they're not this particular species. they're not a bad species. They will take away your pain if they can. They, you know, they always put you back. Would you say that they care about you?
They care about you as Jay Leno would care about one of his cars or motorcycles. I would say it that much.
Okay, there is some level. Okay. I don't know if it's too simple a question to ask you, but for you, are the experiences that you've had where you have been taken by aliens without your, you know, express approval, have those experiences been bad for you or good for you, or would you describe them in another way?
That's a really good question. I think the way I look at it now is I don't tend to want to give the aliens any credit. I feel that I have done an extensive amount of internal work that has allowed me to access that information, and I feel that anybody can. So I think that we are the creators of our experiences. I think that everything begins and ends with us. And we must, it's imperative that we do that work so that we can educate ourselves on these other dimensional planes, because that's where our future is headed. We are merging into those realms, both with technology and both in the biological body. You know, if we don't, the human body won't be a vibrational match to this, to the next few years that we're going into. Literally, it really has to do with our health and our ability to live a long life. That we tune ourselves into this next level of our evolution. So that's the way I look at it. I really don't define it as good and bad anymore. I think it's completely up to you, and whatever level that you're at in your spiritual work, you will be met with that mirror in the universe. If you're working on these lower aspects of yourself, because they're infinite, you know, you're going to see the darkness, and we have to become friends with the darkness. We have to know the darkness. Otherwise, we become slaves to the darkness. And so, you know, I think that's really important. It's important for you to understand yourself in all those unknowns.
People who are in the documentary, The Seeding, and a lot of people I've talked to in the past consider their experiences to be bad. They consider that the taking without permission, the abducting without permission from their homes, and they have no say in it, they can do nothing about it. It's a bad experience. It's bad for them. So if we talk about, you know, bad for who, is it good or bad for the humans? Many of them would say it's bad for them. Many of them feel like they are being raped when they have things inserted into them in order to do reproductive experiments on them. Bodies, some of the women's bodies, lots of the women's bodies, most of the women's bodies are being used to grow hybrid fetuses, and they become pregnant, and they will carry the baby for a while, and then suddenly it will disappear. It will be removed. And for many women, that experience they interpret as being a bad experience. However, people like Laura Zoller, who has had experiences, her experiences is also described in the grey alien and tall pink alien. Her experiences with aliens are good. She feels like she's probably been abducted. She doesn't remember all of the details, like Trae and Raphael, but she considers this little short grey guy to be like a friend who she kind of wants to hug, like a loving creature. It's interesting, actually, that what Raphael was saying about it feels okay. It feels right that he's there, and he's not sure why he's not struggling. The aliens have the ability to put into the minds of the people the idea that this is perfectly okay. I'm going to get up and walk with you into the living room. I'm going to walk down this corridor with you. This feels fine. It feels like it's coming from them. It's only afterwards that they think that behavior is a bit strange for me. I don't think I would be like that in reality. But then, is it possible that aliens have a higher purpose that somehow makes these abductions right? For example, if scientists, human scientists on this planet, see that a species of animal is becoming endangered, in danger of becoming extinct, so we start interfering, and we go in there and we're capturing the animals, we're abducting those animals. Maybe we're tagging them with something, like a radio collar or a tag or something, in the same way that many abductees feel like they've been tagged with an implant. And we start breeding those endangered species in captivity so that we can try and build up the numbers. You know, that might be an example of a situation where good and bad is different to right and wrong. What is bad sometimes might be the right thing to do. And this is a distinction that a lot of people don't raise their intellectual level of thinking about morality this much. But good and bad is a very low level way of looking at morality. You've probably heard of the term the lesser of two evils. That is basically moving on from the level of just something being good and bad to, well, yeah, you might have the good and bad, but a higher level than that is right and wrong. And sometimes it is right to opt for the less bad option. So what is right is what we should be really asking. Is it right for aliens to be abducting us? Do you feel that any of the species of aliens that are taking you have a higher purpose that might make it right to be doing what they're doing?
Mm-hmm. My opinion on that is no. And I kind of get looked at funny when I say that, because I'm very well aware of the highest vibrational potential beings that there are out there. But I can only speak from very limited human understanding of the universe and all these laws, really, you know, and really the real answer should be, I don't know, actually, you know, that's actually the real answer. Because what is white, what is whole, what is complete does not require from something else. And I've seen that in nature. I've seen that in all the things that are thriving in the universe. So I look to that natural law as a rule which we all abide by, whether we're small or big.
If we look at this question of right and wrong, it does require us to know, in order to properly answer that question, whether something is right or wrong, it does require us to know their purpose, their motivation. Why are they doing that? If the animals that human scientists are going into and abducting and tagging and doing reproductive experiments with in order to save a species, if those animals could know the purpose of the scientists, then they might be saying, oh, okay, that's different then. Now I get it. So we don't know the purpose of the aliens doing the abductions. And without that knowledge, making a moral judgment isn't possible if we're looking at it in terms of right and wrong rather than good and bad. If we're at the level of good and bad, then some of these experiences from a small number of aliens, yeah, they're bad experiences for people. But if we're looking at, well, what's the higher purpose? That requires knowledge of the higher purpose.
And I would say it was an auditorium setting, because I noticed that below me there was another set with more chairs, and below me there was a set. But there was other people sprinkled around in this auditorium. And then I'm looking at the bottom of what seems to be a stage area. And at this arched doorway, this being comes in, and I've only heard it described once, and I've never heard anybody else describe this being before. But it was like a jelly-like being, had no bones whatsoever. Inside of its body looked kind of sparkly, and it walked in a very fluid like motion. And it pointed at a table that had a black box on top of it. And when it pointed at the black box proceeded to open, and a hologram of the earth came out of this black box. And I remember telepathically hearing that when this happens, you're going to have a job to do. And I was like, okay, like, I don't know what's happening. Once again, I'm okay with this happening for some reason. I'm not panicking. I'm just sitting down watching the show. And this meteor proceeds to hit the planet explodes, and all of a sudden I'm in this field, and me and a whole bunch of other people have our hands up, kind of like projecting energy to try to make this meteor explode. I wake up from that like little auditorium scene, and I'm in front of my driveway holding my son. His legs are wrapped around me, his head is on my shoulder, and I'm watching this massive ship just float away from my house. And that was pretty much the most intense abduction experience I've had. After that, I've had little ones here and there in meditation and remote viewing, but those were like the key ones that imprinted inside of my mind and will forever be something I will never forget.
The old alien, did he tell you anything else other than that they're from that right star or that right stellar system of Orion?
Well, just simple little things like, you know, not the big warning about if we use up all our resources, but they did. They used up all their resources. They became more space bound, and they needed they overwhelmed their planets, and it's still inhabited, but not at the capacity it used to be. So that's why they sparred it off and made it 2 other home planets, so that because they're after they went spaceborne, they increased their populations by the multi-millions.
Yeah.
Which is a good idea, just to put your place on the mark, to get you and that's why he was saying, you know, go out and make babies and make people. You got to create and expand your race to put your fingerprint out in the space. And he said that's one of the reasons why they do the reproductive program, is to get numbers. And one of the other, and I think I mentioned this last time too, one of the other crazy thing is about the hybrids is there's a program to where it's usually people that are fully conscious and they're higher up. When the hybrids are made and they are a beautiful mixture of both and they look like us, they have a control agent here on Earth, an abductee, contactee that goes to their apartment or helps them set up an apartment, helps them get a job, and helps them acclimate into normal society, and checks in on them weekly or monthly, depending on what their stage of development is, and reports to their alien counterpart up there, and gives reports and stuff on how they do, and they're supposed to help them. And I think that's a neat little idea.
Cool.
I don't know why. Yeah, it just made me think of that.
Yeah. How do you know about the hybrid program of the tall white pinks?
Oh, they're there. The ones that didn't make the cut, that don't look like humans, they're there. They're helping. They have to pull their weight just like everybody else. And a lot of the humans feel better around them, so they usually they'll still have the big eye. A lot of them will still have the big eyes, but they'll have the whites instead of the dark part. And this is a little sad too, and I don't know why they keep it. A lot of them will have like wispy hair, like when old people are starting to lose their hair, so it'll still be there, but it'll grow in clumps, or it won't grow very well. Yeah. So you can tell them, and their skin looks more like ours. It has more of a a human feel to it with pores in it.
So you've got actually on their craft, you've got three categories of being basically. Then, other than humans, you've got the tall white pinks, you've got the greys, and you've got the hybrids. How many hybrids are there mixed in?
And they I don't know if they divide them up evenly or what have you, but the children and stuff, you rarely see them unless one of their parents are on boards, and then they'll come. I mean, some of them don't want to see them. I'm one of them that elected out of it. I don't want to see them. But yeah, I mean, they'll come in, they'll assist in the medical pods, or the children are on board. They'll play with the children in their pen. So they'll help them out and play games with them because they want to be around the humans, because they have more personality, I guess, if you will, than and they speak. They don't use just their mind, but some of them have the telepathy, some of them don't. It's just all different.
The hybrids are comparable in size and shape to humans.
Some are taller, some are shorter, some have more hair, some have less hair. It's like a genetics project that Dr. Monroe didn't perform correctly. I'd be honest with you, that's what we're talking about here, genetics.
So there's a whole range of different sizes and shapes of hybrid.
Some have shorter necks, some have the long, tall, skinny necks with skinny arms where no nut muscle tone is found.
But they are all
products.
They are all knowledgeable. They are all aware that they are hybrids, and they are in on the purposes of what's going on. If I were to meet face to face any of these hybrids, I'm assuming with most of them I would be able to tell, okay, you're a hybrid.
Right.
Do their irises have color?
Yes, most of them.
Okay. Have you had any conversations of a meaningful nature with any hybrids?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it wasn't like we sat down for coffee or anything, but who are you? Oh, I'm so and so. What do you do? Oh, I usually like to do this, or do you know your parents? Oh yeah, I know them both. They come from here. I mean, and they talk. They use their mouth and everything.
You have parented some of those hybrid beings, is that correct?
That I know of, yeah.
And how do you know that?
They've told me. My handler has asked me if I wanted to see them, and I told him I never do.
Okay. Do you have any idea about how many hybrid children you might have?
No. It's like one of those things. So once you tell them something, it's set in stone. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Unless you bring it up again. And I don't.
How do you feel personally about the idea that you have hybrid children?
Well, it was done without my knowledge or my say so, and so it was on their terms, so they can deal with it. I mean, that's where my inhumanity comes in.
Yeah.
And that's my line.
And in order to father those children, they extracted sperm from you. Did they ever put you in a situation where you were having intercourse with another human or an alien on the ship, anything like that?
I don't ever think anything was actually physical. I mean, it may have been, with other people just for an exhibition for them, but it's being in stirrups. That might have been familiar. I don't think I remember anything like that, but that's what I feel that was extracted medically.
So if I may ask you, this draconian program, you are a participant in there uh, in order to help them produce hybrids. Are you able to tell us now memories you have of the process by which this happens, the step-by-step biological or technological process by which a hybrid is produced?
Yeah, you know, it's a very complex procedure, but it's done, and it depends on the program that is leading the procedure. For the human programs, they are done through the military. So a lot of children that are grown in the military are participants either willingly or by force, unfortunately, right? And they they don't require much more than a piece of your genetic information, and they tend to utilize the spinal cord, spinal information from the spine, and either through a spinal tap or something like that. And a lot of people have experienced that. But there's many different parts to this, because what is interesting about the process of creating a new life is that everything plays a role in what you're producing. So the insemination process plays a role, who is uniting with who plays a role. And so in these programs, some of them are staged or created for two actual beings to unite and create this being. Sometimes there is, artificial insemination that is done. And some of these experiences can be very dark, in which they're done by force for a reason, because through that forceful interaction is created something. It creates an energetic imprint into whatever is being seeded. So those are looking at the darkest parts. Going into the lighter parts, you have the unions that are created and designed with star seeds or beings, hybrids that are, let's say, higher vibration or more conscious of their experience, are also united based on their vibrational frequency in order to create life. The insemination process of these things can vary. Again, I mentioned sometimes it's screen images of a being that may be pulled from your subconscious mind in order to make it more acceptable and easy for you to engage in that contact. The insemination process is not the first step. It's actually the second step. The first step is the implantation. And so whatever agenda this is, usually they have implantation in the body. They will use your DNA, your biological information, in order to create whatever they need to insert into the body to monitor and to communicate with this agenda. And after the insemination is a gestation process. And usually the gestation process can be anywhere between 1 month to 3, maximum 4 months. The next part would be the extraction or the giving birth of the child. And a lot of times the zygotes or the fetuses they're moved along faster. They're accelerated, the gestation process. So oftentimes what they remove from you will seem a lot more, far along advanced than, the actual time that you've had them in you. And they are put into incubation tanks. And these incubation tanks, I mean, sometimes there's rooms with rows and rows of these tanks sometimes. And so it's a very vast and complex, program. It ends with a presentation of the child. And I believe that presentation is very important to both of those organisms, yourself as the donor of that information, and also the one that's embodying. It's an exchange and an imprint of information that occurs in that exchange.
So I'm going to now ask, you've described the draconian program in some detail. What is another program that you have discovered that you are involved with?
Yeah, I mean, the Pleiadian program, it's very interesting to me. They claim that they're for high vibration, for the evolution of mankind. But I tend to question that. And the reason why is because if you understand the laws of creation, everything that is in light, in the highest vibrational order, it doesn't need to survive off something external. So in my mind, it's a parasitic expression, you know. And so I tend to think of it like, okay, if you're high vibration and you're utilizing this, hiding, having these unconscious agreements where a person is not aware of their agreement, and it does cause a lot of fragmentation and trauma. I cannot believe that that is serving somehow these white or light agendas. So in any case, these agendas are meant to create these hybrids that are supposedly high vibration. And a lot of the children that are being put into the timelines are truly high vibration beings, but they are also very much attuned to the technology. So yeah, and then I don't know if you want to, I mean, the way that they create the insemination is the same. It, you know, it's usually mechanical. They utilize a lot of grays for their work, you know. And yeah, that's, I don't know, there's
So
so much more, but I'll just end there.
yeah, thank you very much. So just to recap and make sure there's no confusion here. The first experience you described, where the light was outside your window, and then you saw those greys, the 7 or foot tall ones. Those were Pleiadians that you described. The Draconians, how did they appear to you?
Oh yeah, the Draconians are massive, massive beings. They are, I mean, I don't even know if of course they look 7 feet, but they are massive, and they're very top heavy. They have these very interesting structures to their body that's like very muscular, and some of them have wings in the back. Um, some of them don't have wings. It just they're like dinosaur type beings slash humanoid type beings, you know, very rough skin, very uh, grotesque snout type of face. Literally, they have a snout, and you know, they're very just massive. And I know that when I was a child and I saw them for the first time, I mean, it just looked like a dresser, you know, a giant dresser. It was just right there. I mean, it was so massive. But what I remember was the most impactful about that experience was the emotions that they trigger, the way that it makes you feel. It's like everything that is the darkest and the scariest thing that you could ever possibly think of. Like if you're watching a horror film, like, you know, it creates that feeling in you. This is what you feel. And it's like just by approaching them, this is what you're feeling. They give off that energy. So now in retrospect, I don't feel that it's necessarily something negative. I just think that that's their expression, you know, that's their vibrational expression, which can seem kind of contradictory, but you know.
Okay, thank you. And that's 2 programs we've covered. Are you able to tell us about the third program?
Yeah, the reptilian, I mean, I talked about Pleiadians, Draconians in the human program.
Okay.
The reptilian is very much like the Pleiadian. I think that there are high aspects of the reptilians, and there are also very low aspects of the reptilians in which, you know, they don't really utilize these children for the best purposes, you know, so, or whatever they're creating. So,
How do they utilize those children?
well, everything that is in destruction of what is divine and what is whole, you know.
Now, how many hybrid children are you aware of that you have?
24.
24. And how many of those have you seen?
Well, at this point, I've probably seen about 15 of them. But the rest of them are non-humanoid types. Some of them are even interdimensionals. But the ones that I've seen physically are only the 4, like physically.
Okay. And again, I may be oversimplifying things here. Are you happy that you have those 24 hybrid children?
I'm happy that I'm aware of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you could hypothetically go back in time and prevent your participation in any of these programs, would you?
No, and I think that it's a part of experiencing this dimensional plane. It's fragmentation which has to occur.
What is it that you take clients for? What work do you do now with experiences? And if anybody watching this video here would like to connect with you in some way for your help or for your advice, how should they go about doing that?
Yeah, sure. So there's 2 sessions that I offer. I do DNA reprogramming and I do hypnotherapy. I call it holographic hypnotherapy. I call it holographic hypnotherapy because I can see everything that you see. And I help remove any kind of entities, attachments, blockages on the holographic level of the layers of your body. This is the 3-hour session, and a DNA reprogramming is it's an hour and a half. It's a very heavy session in which we access the root cause of blockages, emotional blockages that are happening with you that are stored within your multidimensional body. We unpack them and we reintegrate fragments of your soul that are created through those fragmentations. Yeah, so if you want to work with me, please feel free to check out my website at geraldineorozco.com. And I also offer my support group at hybridmother.com. So if you're an experiencer and need support in any way or connection, I think you hold support groups as well. They can visit that website as well. Yeah.
Why do aliens abduct people? Now, I'm going to answer that question to the best of my ability, and I'm going to let you know in my interpretation, and this is not knowledge. This is not knowledge, but I based on everything that I've learned about in my life to do with this subject, it's my strong assertion. It's my I would say it's almost certainly true that the vast majority of alien abductions that occur are not industrial military complex. They just don't have that much power. There's not that many people out there to be doing this abducting. There's not that technology. We don't have the technology to have produced. And think about how many decades back these abductions are going on. We didn't have, and we don't have that number of greys, of tall pinks out there with telepathic abilities to be doing this completely staged by humans. So it's my assertion that most of these abductions are actually one or more species of aliens doing these abductions. And they usually seem to involve greys. And those greys are usually considered by the abductees to be controlled by another species of alien. And the greys are usually considered to be like servants or slaves or mechanical, some kind of non-sentient alien. And actually, if you watch Unearthing Nazca in Gaia, and you can see YouTube excerpts from that, they've got mummified bodies of a tall alien, very clear, filmed, full sight, studied by scientists, mummified body of a tall alien. And in the same location, they found mummified bodies of small, what appear to be more mechanical beings. And so if you haven't seen that, I do recommend people see that. So why do aliens abduct people? Assuming they do, why do they do that? There are many theories out there. And I'm going to kind of cut through it all. There's lots of belief-based theories. A lot of them just don't hold water. I'm going to tell you up front, I don't know the answer to this, but based on the information that I've accumulated, I'm going to give you what I think is the best theory. It's very controversial. If we try and expand our thinking of what's going to happen in the future, if we get to the stage where we're building colonies on the moon and hundreds of years from now, we're off in living in space in some colonies, we're gonna find ourselves in different environments. When we're in different environments, astronauts need to have different spacesuits. They need to have different environmental controls. And sure, we can do that. But if we're looking more advanced into the future, what we're going to find, our natural progression into the future is going to be, we're going to start to genetically modify ourselves to better fit our environment. And just like how when the first heart transplant was done, many people considered that to be immoral and evil, and you're cutting out somebody's heart and put it into your body. That's just something you can't do. Now it's routine. Organ transplant is routine. It's routine to cut out a pig's heart, a live pig, kill a live pig, take that pig heart, put it into a human being. That's common now. And we're used to this sort of thing going on. And now it seems okay just a few decades later. If we consider moving into the future where modifying our bodies is a more efficient and acceptable way of modifying ourselves for certain environmental conditions, then we start to get an insight as to why so many biological alien species are humanoid. It is utter nonsense to think of humanoids evolving on other planets. You know, you can speculate and say, oh, humans are such a perfect result of evolution, and that's going to be the end point on every planet. That's nonsense. That's garbage. It just doesn't hold water. If you know anything about the science of evolution at all, it is I'm a scientist, I should let you know, so I understand about these things to a very high level. Humans have evolved on this planet, absolutely. There are no, people talk about it being a theory and missing links. Evolution is not a theory, it's something that can't not happen if you understand natural selection. It's inevitable that evolution happens. We see it around us every day. We're on a small scale with viruses and things, but with larger organisms, it absolutely has happened over billions of years. And it has taken trillions of little environmental things going on for us to end up, after billions of years, just this last little tiny speck on the timeline that we've just arrived at human beings. I personally have had my own DNA tested for ancestral reasons. And so I can, tell you I've got like 2.7% Neanderthal in me and this percentage of Denisovan. These are other humanoid species that existed in the past. We can map this out very clearly. We can see our development in our brains when a baby is growing initially in a womb. We start off with gills. We start off with a fishtail. We go through those evolutionary stages. Humans evolved on this planet. We weren't put here by aliens. We have got then all these alien species who are looking humanoid, but rather crazily, some of them have reptilian features. Some of them seem to be humanoid, but with insect features. Some of them seem to be humanoid, but with cat-like features. What has happened is aliens have come here from elsewhere, thousands of years ago, probably millions of years ago. Quite well, I'm not going to say probably millions, quite possibly millions of years ago. They came here in a form that was not conducive to our environment, maybe even just in spiritual form. And they wanted to interact on our planet, in our vicinity of the Earth. So they engineer a spacesuit for themselves. They're far more spiritual. They're far more spiritually aware. They have spiritual technology. To them, bodies are far less important. The physical body is far less important. They identify themselves far more with their spirits. And so the genetic manipulation of their of bodies to basically genetically engineer humanoid bodies for themselves is the most efficient and obvious and logical way of being able to interact in this part of space, in the proximity of our planet. So what do? They come down to our planet, they find the most advanced life form, which is us. We are the most advanced, we are the best suited organism. We're perfectly designed by evolution and natural selection to interact in this environment. We are the perfect spacesuit for them, or Earth suit for them. So they use our DNA to create themselves, but they also like bringing in little bits of DNA from other species where it is useful for them to do so for whatever purposes they have. For example, it's not much use having bones in space and strong muscles in space. So if you're spending a lot of time in zero gravity or lower gravity conditions, bones actually deteriorate a bit, and having strong muscles doesn't matter as much. So they can design themselves to be skinnier and maybe even have an exoskeleton if they're more of an insectoid. So it is absolute undeniable logic that alien bodies are the result of them taking human DNA to manipulate themselves. It's not the other way around. Some people think that they're here to manipulate our DNA. Well, you know, they might do some selective breeding. They might do minor genetic modification, who knows? But it's not much, if at all. I don't have any evidence for that. The experiments they're doing, the reproductive experiments they're doing, they have engineered bodies for themselves out of what was already here. Pretty much like what happens in the movie Avatar. Now, why are they here? They have a very strong, powerful, intense hybrid program going on. They are making hybrids, as many as possible. All the abductees that are out there feel that they have multiple children, multiple hybrid children. Most of the time they're shown their children. A lot of the time they're asked to interact with them and help them and nurture them and be part of their lives on board the craft. They are churning out these hybrids. Why? Well, clearly it's not some kind of invasion. If it was some kind of invasion, we're taking over the Earth. First of all, they've been here for hundreds of thousands of years, probably, definitely thousands of years. They could have easily taken over the world if they wanted to. But that's not what they're doing. They're not here to take over. They've already got vast amounts of space in extra-dimensional space. They don't need any more space. If they wanted to wipe us out, they could have done it a long time ago. So they're not here for sinister purposes in terms of for humans. Their purpose is to create these hybrids. Why are they churning out these hybrids? Some of them, possibly, maybe, are being put down on the planet, but that's not their purpose, because they're producing way, way, way more than that. It's not some kind of invasion. There may be reconnaissance, there may be vacations going on. Those people that live in Las Vegas know that there are, almost certainly, we've got lots of strong evidence of aliens walking around, disguised as humans or even looking humanoid. There are people here among us, Naomi is one, who has gone into a Walmart in Long Beach, and it was full of aliens working in Walmart, and it's shut down now. But if you look at the comment section of that Walmart, there's lots of comments like, I think these guys were just aliens. That they're among us, but they're not here to invade. That's not their purpose. I will tell you my speculation, the only one that makes sense for me. And it also comes with evidence from what Trae has said. It is a survival advantage to have numbers. The more numbers that you have, the more likely you are to continue to survive into the future. It's that simple. They feel like the more of them that they have, the more likely they are to survive into the future. It is their method of reproduction. Now, they are not as attached to their own biological bodies as we are. To us, it might not make sense to make hybrids and call that reproduction, because you're not reproducing your original biological form. But to them, they're not as attached to their biological bodies as we are. So whether it's hybrid or not, if their consciousnesses, if their spirits are being reproduced and their desires and their species and their pursuits are reproducing, and on a spiritual level, it's like the expansion of their species and their culture. That is what reproduction is to them. So human beings are used as a reproductive tool for them. We're part of their reproductive process. That is my best guess. Now, I know I'm lecturing a lot, and I'm getting a few people drop out. I know a lot of the things I'm saying are controversial, but I want to address very briefly before I finish talking and invite comments to come in. I want to address the last question, which I think is very important. Are we safe doing CE5s? The answer is absolutely 100% yes. When we do CE5s, we are very specifically targeting certain species. There are negative entities out there. There are demonic forces. There are bad spirits. There are bad human ancestral ghosts out there. There are these aliens that abduct people. But when we do remote viewing, we can target very specific entities in very specific locations. When I host remote viewing sessions, the last remote viewing session I did, the target, which people didn't know they were remote viewing, I only told them go to this place of the photo that I have in front of me. And the photo was an underwater photo of the Titanic. And people went there. They took their spirits there very directly. People were underwater, drawing pictures of metal triangles underwater. There was a submarine coming with lights shining down on it, and people were drawing these circles with cone-shaped beams coming out of them. There's ample proof that remote viewing works. If it didn't, CE5 wouldn't work. So when we're doing CE5, we are very specifically targeting with our remote viewing friendly, benevolent aliens. We're not remote viewing demons or negative spirits or abducting ETs or aliens. We are targeting very specific beings. So we're not in danger. It's actually more dangerous to go to sleep and dream than it is to do CE5s. Because when you fall asleep and dream, your spirit can randomly, uncontrolled, roam around in all of these places where all the negative forces are. You can roam around and encounter these abducting aliens or demonic places or negative spirits, whatever they are. That's far more dangerous just simply falling asleep than it is to do a targeted remote viewing. Being asleep and dreaming is like walking down the street semi-conscious and knocking on random doors. Remote viewing is knowing which door you want to knock on, and you go and knock on a specified door. So is CE5 safe? Absolutely, yes, 100%. The mechanism involved in it guarantees it. none of us are completely safe in our lives from negative spirits coming in or abducting aliens from coming in at any time. I personally have experienced negative entities coming in my past, coming in, and I had sleep paralysis experiences when I was in my early 20s, and there were negative entities coming and trying to come and influence me. I was able to push them away, but I wasn't CE5ing at that time when that was happening. They just randomly out there, they roam around and they can attack people. They can do negative things to us. But CE5ing is safe. You're actually probably, I would say, safer as a CE5 practitioner than if you're not, because you're practicing your skills, your spiritual skills. You're gaining spiritual strength. And so if something negative comes in, you're far more able to push it away. Can we, as human beings, guarantee that we're never going to be abducted by whichever species of alien that are doing these abductions? No, we can't. We're powerless over that. Our spiritual strength and positivity, that can't stop an alien coming in and taking us if it wants to. They're too powerful. They have technology and power over us that we can't control. I have heard of one person who had this mental control put on them from an alien, a grey that came in to try and abduct him. It's another documentary you can watch on Amazon about implants. And he managed, with the power of his mind, to break free from the mental sort of hold that the alien had on him and take a swing at the alien. And the aliens left. So I know of one person that was mentally strong enough to stop that from happening. But otherwise, whether we do or whether we don't do CE5s, we're powerless to stop that kind of abduction. It usually runs in a family. So if your father is abducted or your mother, then you get abducted, and then your children will get abducted. That's how it usually works. So that is the basic situation. If I want to summarize all of this into like a final sentence or two, I would say there are many species of aliens out there. Most of them are really, really good. A very small number of them will do things that many humans don't like abducting and doing reproductive experiments on them. Whether we do CE5 or not, we can't do anything about that. Many people who have those experiences like them. They like that they have hybrid children. They love those hybrid children. They want to be a part of those hybrid children's lives. Many people who have these abduction experiences don't like the experiences. How should this impact what we do with CE5? I would say that it matters more than ever that we continue to do CE5, that we reach out, that we build proper relationships with aliens, with all of the aliens that are out there. Maybe if we can raise our evolutionary state, if we can raise our morality and establish proper relationships with some of these alien species, then the aliens who are abducting us, they might start to think, maybe it's not okay to be doing what we're doing. Maybe it's not right. Maybe we need to find other ways. Maybe we need to consider the rights of human beings more. Maybe we need to take steps like treating animals better before some of them will think, oh, maybe we're gonna follow the human being's example and think of lower life forms as having more rights. So that's sort of my basic summary of my thoughts on the situation. I hope I've been clear about what I know and what I don't know, what we can logically deduce, and what we can only speculate on.